So they still have to pay for their timeshare?
I don't know, but I want to watch that video over and over again.
She needs a TV show. We need to give that woman.
Wait, let's find her. Let's see if we can find her name.
Should we imagine if we get her to guest on the pod?
Oh my God. That would be incredible. Because do you think she's an actor or do you think she really works there? Okay, Wesley Financial Group ad.
But Shai, why are you seeing that ad, or who was seeing that ad?
Shai, the other day, Shai mentioned timeshares, so I'm sure his phone heard it.
Here we are, and welcome to another episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast. If you could see us right now, you would see that Becky is so excited about today's episode, where we will be talking about heels on Starz, that she is carrying a He-Man Masters of the Universe Origins figures that I purchased for her child. I'm pretty sure that's
First of all, you did not buy this for my kid. You bought this for
absolutely.
Kid.
Your daughter has her own set. Do you know that?
She does? No, I didn't know that.
Absolutely. I bought your daughter her own He-Man Skeletor as well.
Well, this must be hers because it's covered in chocolate chips.
Okay. So just so you know, I look out for I didn't buy her as many because I don't think she's that committed to the He-Man narrative, but she did get her own He-Man and Skeletor to play with. Okay.
You know who is committed to it and wears his He-Man fish shirt every night? Your nephew.
My nephew. Yeah, because he's into it. Each kid will get into the things that what they're into. I will follow their passions. Like Becky's daughter loves bagels with cream cheese and sprinkles on them. And the other night I was eating ice cream cake and I poured extra sprinkles on them in honor of your daughter.
She's all in on the sprinkles.
So she loves sprinkles. In fact, she looks at me while I'm putting the sprinkles on and looks at me saying, "Tio Shai, are you going to put more?" That doesn't look like enough. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. So you're both on vacation and Am I? I mean, there's no such thing as vacation until your children are over the age of 7. So it just doesn't exist. You are always a madricha, which is a counselor. You're always a madricha, which is a Hebrew word for counselor.
Right now,
all the time.
Right now, I'm the camp nurse. First of all, my youngest one looks like an actual zombie. Like she looks like
my kids saw a picture of her and they were worried.
Yeah,
her eyes so puffy.
Dead. It's terrifying.
It's like she's dressed up for Halloween.
So she has some virus that's, as the doctor put it, oh, don't worry, she's too sick to have COVID. It's definitely not COVID. That's whatever virus she has.
That was the barometer for how
all the diarrhea-itis, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Like all the viruses mashed up into one that you could have. And it's a treat, let me tell you. I haven't slept in like worse 3 days. Flu. Yeah, it is. It's but sad. She's not, luckily she doesn't have the vomiting symptoms. So she's not doing that. But combined with our powers combined between my children and yours, they do have all
everyone has had the symptoms.
It's mine.
So wait, can I just quickly say, when we were in the Poconos, I'm pretty sure when our families were all together in Poconos, I mentioned that I had to have mentioned this on the podcast, that Ari starts barfing in the middle of the night and comes running upstairs and Allie's trailing behind him, cleaning up barf. I jump out of bed, and then at that moment I'm in the bathroom with him. He's just throwing up, and you, Becky, Shai, Becky, Allie are sitting there with me in the bathroom as I'm holding my son's head. And it was surreal. I hadn't seen you guys in 2 years. The amount I've missed you and conjured you up in my imagination many times. This and the hard times that I had the last 2 years, it was such a surreal moment. And there you all were, as if you were figments of my imagination, supporting me through this awful night.
It is as if we were in the end of the labyrinth. Should you
need us? That's what I thought of. And then 2 nights ago, Ari's sleeping in my room with me here on this vacation. 2 nights ago, I kind of turn over. I just look at him. He's sitting up. He like woke me up when he's like sat up, and he just starts barfing onto the floor. And I like, oh shit. And we like get into action, bring him into the bathroom. He keeps barfing, comes back into bed, keeps barfing. We're back and forth. And Becky's sleeping. And I was like, okay, you know, this is more normal, right? Just me, you know, having to deal with this in the middle of the night. And I remembered, I was like, oh, but it's much more fun when one of my siblings could be there, which is rare. And I turn around and Becky's just has her hand on my shoulder. Like, are you real? She's like, I heard that maybe one of your kids could be sick. Do you need anything? I was like, oh my God, did I dream you? Are you actually real?
Do you want to know why I heard it? Because I was up the entire night with my sick child. The whole night.
Well, while you were up to these things.
You still came up to help me.
When you were up to these things, I was channeling Lily this week.
Oh my God.
I achieved. Did Becky, you told Lily the story?
I didn't.
This is the Beverly Goldberg situation. I channeled Lily on a pretty amazing level this week. Totally out of fairness, by the way. I did not. This was not me schnauzing or sneaking or stealing or scamming anyone.
Are you implying that's what I do?
No, I'm just letting everyone know that as I
but I would say you perhaps lean in to.
You lean into getting discounts when you are displeased. We got a new security system in my house, which is a whole separate issue, but no one's getting in here now. And if you are being recorded. In the meantime, last year, we had installed those number pad locks that I had ordered through a Best Buy advisor or consultant, whatever you want to call it, one of these Best Buy salespeople. And the locks were part of this bigger set with Ring cameras, and it never came to fruition. There was just the installation guy didn't like the products, and the service guy and the sales guy.
The installation guy from the company you bought it from didn't like the product.
I can't tell if he didn't want to do the work or if he just didn't think what they sold me was the right stuff.
Could have been either one.
I have
Sorry.
What is that noise?
What is that?
My phone was going off. Sorry.
Okay. So I don't know what it was, but ultimately the sales guy disappeared anyway. So I never was able to finish this installation. So I had this half installed security system, and I went to a new company recommended by my brother-in-law, and they came and did an amazing job, and they installed all the stuff I wanted installed. And in the process, their installation guy removed the old locks, and to his credit, he took every screw and kept them organized. And so every piece of these, and now me, because I don't throw things away, Lily, if you remember, there's that pile of boxes next to my office.
I do remember the pile.
It's gone now. The pile of boxes is gone now. I kept the packaging for all of the locks. So I packaged up these locks that were installed in my house, not a year ago, but almost a year ago, as well as a few unopened products that were part of the sale. And I went to Best Buy. And I had the receipts.
Tell me you returned it all.
I had the receipts, and I went to the first Best Buy, and I got them to give me store credit. I see, my approach was very clear. I said, I know I am coming after your return policy. Let me explain what happened. Explain the story. I said, I'm not trying to take money from Best Buy. Believe me, I'm going to spend money at Best Buy this year. But please let me return the stuff and give me store credit. And so the first Best Buy I went to, they took all of the closed stuff back, but they said the opened locks, they said, we weren't the Best Buy that sold these. You have to go to another Best Buy. And so I drove to that Best Buy, and their reaction when I got to them was, why did they tell you to come to this Best Buy? They could have just returned them there. I guess they just didn't want the inventory.
They want to do it.
And I said, look, I didn't make up that you were the Best Buy. I just returned these there. They told me you're Best Buy, and I gave them their Best Buy.
You didn't remember how many Best Buys are there around you? You didn't remember which one you went to?
No, because the sales guy brought it to me.
He spent a lot of time in the car calling me.
The installation guy had brought them to me. So I didn't know which store he even worked for. By the way, they didn't even know which store he worked for, which was a whole separate issue.
Does he even work for Best Buy?
He does work for Best Buy, but he's associated with a specific store. Anyways, he's very hard to reach. And I explained them the story, and I said, look, every piece is inside these boxes. I am not trying. And the customer service lady was initially said, this is outside the return window. I said 100% this is what's outside the return window. I'm just telling you, they were installed in my house. I can't use the service. I'd like to use the money to buy something else at your store. Please take them back. And the very nice manager, he came and he returned it all for full price, gave me store credit. And
it's impressive.
Lily,
you've used them in your house.
Although
Becky's the master of returning things. I get stuff for free, but I'm not so good at returning stuff. Whereas Becky will get something from one place and return it to another place and manage to get to pick out something else.
Yeah, I was running a little
Bed Bath & Beyond scam for a while.
I was running like a Bed Bath & Beyond scam for a few years in New York.
I told you I was running a scam.
I don't want the authorities coming after me.
I was totally honest with them, and to Best Buy's credit, they were fantastic about returns. Every other part of the service until that moment was a disaster, but allowing me to make
the keypads that you had on your house.
It's not my fault. The Bed Bath has
new
terrible.
keypads. I will explain to you not on the podcast how the new keypads work, but they work almost the same as before. Now, separately speaking, I have a pitch for you all. Okay, It's a new streaming service. It's called CLIMAX.
No, you can't call. Nope, you can't call something that. Nope.
But let me tell you. Let me tell you why. We can change the name. But let me tell you
CinemaX for
no, you just can't.
So last night, Allie and I were watching TV. I watched 3 episodes of Reservation Dogs, which we'll get to in recommendations. But wow, right away, that's a wreck. That's a buy. I knocked off the first 3 episodes in one evening. It was so good.
I'm so nervous to finish it because I love it so much.
And then
I'm trying to watch it so slowly.
I needed a dessert, but it was a different type of dessert. I didn't want to watch a whole show from beginning to end. And so I popped onto Netflix and I fast forwarded through the movie Eurovision and watched like the last half hour or so, which is from when the elves kill the bad guy through the final song. And Allie walked in and said, "Whoa, is this just on TV?" I said, "No, I put it up. I put it on at the CLIMAX."
You're pitching.
I put it on at the CLIMAX so I could watch
climaxes.
The best part towards the end, which sometimes you watch a movie all the way to the end. So my idea is it's a streaming service where it shuffles shows, or maybe it's an element, like it's called Netflix CLIMAX.
Or it's just like a scene, the best scenes from movies.
CLIMAX mode, where you hit shuffle, but it shuffles to the best part
like
of the
third act mode. Just
third act. That's great. Wait, that's great.
No, well, I think you could also show scenes from other acts that are the best scenes.
Some movies are better in the middle.
Like
but
for the movie Elf, you'd have to just show the whole movie, for example.
Right, but
every minute of that movie is amazing. But there's other movies at the beginning, has some good stuff. Or the opening scene is great.
The point is that was a perfect dessert. Because it's a movie I know really, really well. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but I wanted the final song. Allie, by the way, wept through the final song.
She's having a moment this week. She's a little emotional this week.
All right. So third act mode. That is our new, I would like to know.
If you can turn that mode on Netflix.
Okay. I'm changing the name in our notes.
It's a plugin.
Third act mode. Plug-in for Netflix, and we're going to have a third act mode episode coming up where we talk about what we would put in the first iteration of this. So for me,
gosh, do people really listen to our podcast? I hope not.
They do listen to our podcast.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Now let's talk. I'm so excited for this because I have been waiting for the show we're going to talk about for months.
How did you even hear this advertised?
I heard about this for maybe even longer, maybe a year. I didn't see it. I had heard a long time ago that Stephen Amell, the star of Arrow, I believe the older brother of the guy from Upload also, who is Canadian.
Oh, that was my question. I was like, I thought he was the Upload guy, and I was so confused.
No, that's Robbie Amell. I'm pretty sure that's his brother.
Okay.
So Stephen Amell, who is Canadian and
from Toronto,
I don't know, a huge wrestling fan. And he himself, when he was the Arrow, did some crossover promotion on some of the wrestling shows. He has actually gone and wrestled. Stephen Amell he didn't develop it, but he was part of the initial crew putting together this show called Heels on Starz, which is a Starz reels me back in. They always screw me. I'm sure they will cancel this show. I hate them so much just so they can do more Outlander, but they do come up with the great shows every once in a while. And this one is about a small time wrestling promotion in which state? I forget.
Georgia.
In Georgia. In Georgia.
Georgia.
And it is a vehicle.
He is from Toronto. I'm just saying, it's just so obvious, but
it's a vehicle for some family drama, some small town Friday Night Lights vibes, but also exposing people to the world, the very weird world of professional wrestling and the culture and rules associated with it. So that's my pitch. And I think the acting I thought was fantastic in the first episode.
Well, I described it. What's our game where you describe a movie using other movies?
Yeah.
Best adapted description.
Best adapted description,
which I came up with. So I'm glad I remembered that.
Best adapted description.
So funny.
So I said to Becky, it's like Friday Night Lights meets Kingdom, but with wrestling.
Yeah.
It's a perfect description.
Yeah, it's not as raw as Kingdom is. It's not as murdery.
But I think the struggling to have his own business. He's the boss, but he's the main character of this business.
Yeah, the family
aspect, the brothers. I think there's similarities to Kingdom.
So that is a great best adapted description of Heels on Starz. I keep having to mention it because I'm sure no one will know where to watch it. It Starz is one step above Epics at this point, I think.
Epics. No way it's Epics.
Just no way.
So I'd love to hear your reactions. Let's get into it. Let's start with and everyone knows, I don't know if everyone knows, I am a wrestling fan. It's kind of like my SMR. There's ASMR. Something about ASMR, whatever. Mm-hmm. It relaxes me in a really weird way. I like both the story and the excitement going on in the show, but also the behind the scenes is what makes professional wrestling really exciting.
Right. And I think having a husband who at some point in his life was a professional fighter and is a professional martial artist and an artist and does that for a living and has his own gyms, which is why Kingdom was such a big deal in our house. It's really hard for him because he's just but it's pretend. He never got into wrestling as a kid. Wrestling wasn't very big in Spain and he has a harder time with it. He did like the show though a lot. And I kept trying to be imagine community theater, but they punch each other and they really hit each other hard. So while the story's not real, the physicality of it is very real. And the training to do a lot of this stuff, most of the stuff they do is extremely rigorous and difficult. And so that, but it is and they mentioned in the show, it is being in this show, it's like a small community theater that you don't want to let go under. You know what I mean? As opposed to everybody would understand, I think, the concept better if it was the local theater and they were trying to keep it alive. Well, it's the same. That's
cool.
He's the theater director and it's the same it's his, business, family business, and they don't want to let it die out. And someone in the show mentions it, this is our community theater. It's so important to this town. And then you get the impression that it's important to many other towns in the United States. So this isn't the only one.
So my first question is this actually typical that in small towns or in small cities, let's say, there are local wrestling leagues? Is this typical?
So in the history of wrestling, before the WWF under Vince McMahon bought up other promotions is what they're called. That's what these these leagues are called, these promotions, and made a national promotion, which is the WWE, which was the WWF at the time, which was the first big national one. There have been other ones since then. They're what were called the wrestling territories. And those were where independent promotions had marked out areas of the country, and actually Canada as well, that were run by these smaller businesses, and wrestlers would bounce around between the different promotions. Some would be exclusive, but a lot of those promotions were family businesses. So there's a family called the Von Erichs, very tragic family, but the Von Erichs, which seems to be a little bit of the way, a little bit of the inspiration for the family, the Spade family in this show, the Von Erichs. There's a great documentary about them in The Dark Side.
My God, I just got it.
His name is Space. Ace. Space.
Yeah, Ace.
I just got it.
And King was their dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Von Erichs.
It's a lot.
I just got it.
I actually had a thought in the show, and I was like, did the dad just change their names so that he could make all their names like that? Because it's a lot that their names are.
That's their ring names. Anyways, so the Von Erichs were a big family. I forget where they were from. Maybe they were from Texas. And then the Hart family, which is Bret the Hitman Hart from Canada, from Calgary, they ran Stampede Wrestling. And that was another very famous promotion. And there's a romantic view of that era and those small promotions and how they were eventually bought up and eliminated. I don't know if we really miss all of them, but what has come since then are smaller independent wrestling promotions. And those operate in smaller cities, or not in smaller cities, in cities, but it doesn't work the same way as in the 70s. And so there are still independent promotions. Some of them I think are probably family related, but there's a little bit of a mixing here of the nostalgia for that pre-1980s era and the independent wrestling. Now, nowadays, because the WWE is so big and bloated, although it has some great moments and some great performers, and they are still the original at what they are, there is a real respect for the independent wrestlers. And there are a lot of wrestlers who have gotten a lot of cred in the independent circuit. And as a result, there's a certain edginess about it that we have here in the show. So that's my answer on whether or not it's real. It's real-ish. It's real enough.
Okay, that's a great answer. So back to me, I did like it. I did like it. I found the first episode of every show is always a bit tough, except Friday Night Lights. Obviously, the episode's perfect, but I think that you're building toward what the rest of the show is going to be like. I don't know how many episodes are in this show, so I don't know how they're going to tease it out, but it was a little bit slow at times, like a teensy bit repetitive, the back and forth. He sat down at his laptop, and I was wondering what Becky thought of that. Like, he sat down at his laptop and opened up that laptop so many times that I thought that was a bit clumsy. But I think
there's going to be 8 episodes, by the way, in the first season.
Okay. So I think that, that's fine. I was like, if it's 6 to 8, it's okay. If this is a 12 episode thing, this is going to drag on way too long. I like the Arrow guy. He's got a very square jaw, and like a big face. And I feel like he's, I guess he's a good actor because he was in that show for so long. I don't know. Is he a good actor?
I think he's a better actor in this than he was in Arrow, but I think that's the nature of that being Arrow as a comic CW show. But he was definitely the guy in that whole franchise of all those different shows, the Arrowverse. He's the one who, that show's over now, but he's the one who held that together.
So I do think he's good. I like the back and forth with him and the brother. I like that there's backstory there with the father and stuff like that. And that it's his own business that he's trying to keep, but he's so passionate about this. I felt that the women characters, even Mary McCormick, who's fantastic, I felt like they were very weak. And if his wife does not say anything other than fetch about his Amazon shopping list, like his order list,
I was gonna say she's a little
we're going to have to move on.
She's a little too cutesy.
But not only that, the only thing she has to say is what shopping, like, I saw your shopping. I have an app. I can see what you're buying. I'm like, bitch, get a job. Like, she's like, you don't want me to work. I should just be a stay-at-home, but I don't want you to spend money on your business.
So
so that she's very annoying. She needs to either get a job or stop looking at what he buys for his business. And the worst part of her, let me just finish. The worst part of her character is when Ace gets the scouting for the like the major leagues or whatever, which is a great twist that he's going to get scout like towards the end. Oh, wow. He's done barely nothing and now he's going to get scouted. She's like, isn't that amazing? Aren't you so happy? Oh, wait, you're mad? I'm sorry. Does she not live with him? Because we're watching the show for less than an hour and we know how hurt he is. So, you live with the guy. Like,
so I think there's a couple.
So clueless.
Like, is she really that clueless as to what Ace is really like? Like, she has no sense that he's really the heel, and Jack is really the face.
And how hurtful this could be to her husband.
Shai, I'm using lingo.
Yeah, those are great. Right. I love that you're using lingo. I'm enjoying it. So
the heel is for the listeners. The heel is the villain in the wrestling match, and the face is the hero.
So yes, I agree with everything Lily has said, and I want to fully agree. I think Crystal currently has the most potential to be an interesting character. So let's see what happens.
Become a real wrestler. I'm excited for her to be a wrestler.
I want to pivot to a story. I don't know, to a device or something that they were using that I really enjoyed. No, that's funny. That I really enjoyed.
I have thoughts on the laptop.
That made me feel like made me really feel like the end of the episode delivered, because they're constantly repeating and they're explaining to the audience and they're repeating throughout that it's just a story, that it's scripted, and they go into all the, is it fake? Is it real? The guys need to stay in character when they're out of the ring. So the townspeople really believe it, but it's not.
Kayfabe? What is it, Shai?
Kayfabe. Mysterious word.
What is kayfabe? Okay, what is
kayfabe? Kayfabe, it dates back to the carnival era, and
it's when you keep into character.
Until the 1990s, there was this notion of protecting the business, and they actually said it, and I thought it was great when they say, protect the business, that even though it was a show that you protected kayfabe, you stayed in character all the time. The storyline was supposed to be portrayed if it was real. So, for example, in the 1980s, all the way through the 1980s, through the 90s, the heels and the faces were not supposed to even be seen together outside of the show because they're bad guys, they're enemies. And there's this famous incident where the Iron Sheik and another guy, I want to say it was I think it was Big John Studd, one was a heel, one was a face, and they got busted doing drugs in a car, and they got fired. Yes, because they were doing bad things, but also because it was this notion that how could you have a heel and a face partying together? That breaks kayfabe.
Interesting. Okay, so they,
which is why he's so mad at his brother when he's acting like a dick at church.
Exactly.
He makes that young woman cry, and he consistently does things that are basically showing his true character, which again, I appreciate that they do make even that more complex. Ace is not just good. He's not the good character that he portrays, but he's also not just some evil, he's also not just like a villain underneath. He is a bit more complex. There is a bit more nuance here, which I like. But all of this leading up to, they keep drilling into you the fact that it's characters, that it's a story, that they're putting on a show, right? And you go into that final match having that drilled into you over and over and over again. Well, at the same time, Jack is also drilling into you. You need to subvert the expectations of the fans. You need to subvert the expectations of the fans. Like, that's how you get them in.
Yep.
And then that final fight scene did exactly that to me, a fan of this TV show, not the wrestling fan, but the fan of the TV show.
He fucks those guys bad.
Right. What I'm saying is that I was watching, I go, oh, wow, this is actually a pretty brilliant ending to the first episode, because all of the lessons you have been foreshadowing to me that this was going to happen, and yet I was entirely unexpected.
Okay, before we go to the ending,
that was very well done.
I really want Shai to break down with us, but before we go there, I think I was not very aware of the term kayfabe before. Kayfabe, but they say it so many times in the episode. It's the name of the episode. And I think, and I'm watching with Colson. I basically was like, imagine you had to be sensei all the time. And he does. Like he has to do kayfabe
sensei all the time.
Right. He goes, first of all, I am a sensei all the time, which is
fair.
Remember?
But because that's why he eats that's why he has to go to like a town over to get McDonald's and eat it in his car.
He can't ever eat, he's never eaten McDonald's anywhere near. First of all, he hasn't eaten McDonald's in years. But if he were to eat McDonald's, it can't be anywhere near where we live. No one could ever see him eat McDonald's, number one. Number two, every once in a while, he'll like to smoke a small cigar or a cigarette, not drugs, but he'll smoke a little cigar or a big cigar or something like that. He can never, or we'll be out for dinner and a friend will be like, oh, I got some cigars. And he can never, ever smoke in public. Ever, ever, ever. Because he could never accidentally be seen by a student or anybody that he would ever smoke. And when we've gone out in Carnival, he always has to wear a costume that has a mask because, you get rowdy or
there
drinking
you go.
and stuff.
So
kayfabe, and then I was like, oh my God, we all have kayfabe, I guess. His is really real too, though, to the point. I mean, you do too, Shai. Like you couldn't, because of your job.
Anyways, I want to just say, Lily,
the concept is very cool.
I want to say that even though there are some issues, that you didn't like with the writing, the female characters, the repetitiveness of the laptop, I do think that the overall structure of the episode and the beats that they keep hitting throughout, and then the third act, Shai, or the climax, as you are so enthusiastic about.
Third act.
It's very well structured, and I thought that it was really good writing overall when you look at what they did with that episode.
I hope, because when you look at shows like Friday Night Lights and Kingdom, right, the women characters are so fantastic.
Oh, God.
Especially, I mean, Friday Night Lights can't even.
I mean,
it's amazing,
you can't even.
But Kingdom, Keely Sanchez.
There will never be another. There will never be another Tammy Taylor. They're just not. I mean, I
true.
don't know.
And the other women on Kingdom were so excellent and complex. The woman that plays their mom, Kulina's ex-wife, and this show would be doing itself a great disservice if they don't tease out those female characters, especially Miriam McCormack. She's so great that I really hope they do something better with her than like one-off barbecue food jokes and, being this sort of soundboard for Jack. Like I hope that they can, go deeper than that on her being like the bully of the girl wrestler or whatever. And that the Amazon Prime wife, I can't deal with her. So I hope they build something out of that.
So I think I think where they are right now in the show with where the characters are, this is the way the women would be relegated. But when you see the way wrestling has evolved, especially in the last 10 years, the women's division in wrestling, and this WWE deserves a tremendous amount of credit, particularly the work that they have done in their NXT division, but and beyond, of developing the women's division and changing it to the women's division. For a while, they called it the Divas, and it was more
is that the Bellas or whatever their names are?
The Bellas were there were before the Bellas and Paige, who's the one they made the movie about, fighting with your family. There were some very famous female wrestlers like Trish Stratus. I think Trish Stratus is that era or before that era, but in the 90s, it was much more of a sex appeal thing, and it wasn't really very serious. But in the last 10 years in particular, with the coming on of Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, and Sasha Banks, those four, they're known as the Force Horsewomen, which is a reference to a previous group of wrestlers from the 70s and 80s. The change of women's wrestling to being a serious athletic sport taken as seriously as the men's division really changed, and I think it's a fantastic part of the show. Both AEW and WWE, the women's divisions, are some of the best stuff that's happening in those divisions, because they have real hardcore wrestling athletes now doing the show, and they are as much wrestlers, and a lot of ground was broken for them by the people before them, but that's the way they're treated now. I think that there is room for heels to develop that as part of the competitive advantage of this promotion.
Right.
That would be fantastic.
That seems like an obvious way to go, because that's part of the whole storyline, right? Like, they need something to compete. Ace is there, was supposed to be what they were going to use to compete, but that's obviously burnt down now.
I also think because of Glow, they really need to show something different. And so they need to give it a little bit of time before there's women's division, because the women of Glow, who were the original Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, as you remember from that show, they weren't wrestlers at all. They were actors. Or there were some stunt women, and there was the character Machu Picchu, who's based on a real character. There were a few people from wrestling families and real wrestlers, but the wrestlers that you would have today in heels would be a much, much more advanced athletic, like they train. And
got it.
So I think there's room to bring that into the story, which would be amazing. The role of Crystal, which is the role of the valet, which is a very specific role.
What's a valet?
Also, Downton Abbey. It's like Downton Abbey.
What's that? She just escorts him?
The valet is part of the show. The most famous valet of all.
Doesn't she give him the weapons or whatever he's going to use?
Sometimes she gives him weapons. Sometimes there's a whole bunch of different things. The valet is part of it's in some ways it's like the musician's assistant. They'll do distractions. They'll help. They're part of the show. The most famous valet of all time is of course Miss Elizabeth, who was initially
Miss Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth. She was married to Randy Macho Man Savage, and he was a big star, and all of these there's a very famous piece of wrestling history where male managers wanted to all be his manager, and he decided to do this totally different thing. And he had his wife, who was this beautiful woman who was very, very kind and sweet, and he was this very gruff, over the top character. And Miss Elizabeth was an icon, and she was very much part of the story. And that story, the Miss Elizabeth story, plays out over decades. It's tragic in the end, like almost every single wrestling story. But the actual kayfabe
in
story,
real life, or in
the kayfabe story, is happy and has a beautiful happy ending. The real life story is horrible. Well, the ending is horrible. Anyways, but A Match Made in Heaven, the episode of Vice's Dark Side of the Ring, which is about the two of them, is fantastic. But that's the history of the valet. So the nod to the valet is serious, and her not being treated seriously and not being treated like a wrestler, but very much having her own ideas. That's a kernel that they're gonna tease out, I think. And the other thing, I think the reason why they showed him at the laptop is that this show carries a huge burden, and it has to show really quickly to people the complexity that is pro wrestling, because most people are probably going to write this off and say, "Ugh, a wrestling show, really?" And they have real writers, and there's a huge competition, and there's a lot of judging of who is coming up with the stories and giving the wrestlers a chance to come up with their own stories, and people overly controlling the stories, which is the by the way, the nickname for stories is called booking, is the booking. And so they have to show you how deliberate it is. And one of the big criticisms of the WWE now is that the stories are overly controlled by the management. So Ace's character, who clearly is a brilliant story writer and understands the tension he has to build, there's also a little bit of tension there about, should he be able to control everything, right? Is that really what's best for them? So that's another dimension. That's another dimension. So
it made me think of, was it Randy Macho Man? Who's the one that always wrote the scripts for his matches?
So Randy Macho Man Savage was
that reminded me of that a little bit.
Notoriously meticulous. Every single movement was choreographed, and he would come up with them, and he would tell guys what to do. And as a result, very famously, he would, what they call, the term they use is carry, guys would wrestle him who are okay, who are pretty good. Like Hulk Hogan's one of the examples, very charismatic, but not known as a good wrestler. But when he and Macho Man would wrestle, it would be amazing, a lot because of what Macho Man would come up with to make the actual match come together. So there's a lot of really neat nuggets I hope they get to develop further. But the show does have a huge burden to climb. Number one, it's on Starz. And that's a network that people go to for Downtown Abbey and Downtown Abbey related things. Or not Downtown Abbey, Outlander, Downtown Outlander, whatever. And the other thing is that it has to explain this stuff to people and make it compelling. So I love the first episode. I can't wait for more. And I hope this explanation helps people get excited for it, but I recognize this is going to be tough.
Well, I loved it. I'm going to keep watching it. I definitely recommend it. I think it's one of those shows that whether or not you're interested in wrestling,
I would hope,
you like a good character-driven story. Like, I wasn't interested in football. I loved Friday Night Lights. It's very much in that vein.
And MMA for Kingdom. You could say the same thing. And if I were to say to someone, "Oh, you might not like Kingdom," it has nothing to do with MMA. It has to do with like the dark places that show goes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It has to do with how dark the drama eventually gets. And I'd be like, "Ooh, you might not be into this." It has nothing to do with the topic because the show is so well done. You know, it's like saying Breaking Bad is amazing, but you know, don't watch it not because of the meth, but because it's pretty depressing. So,
all right. The other show that we started, but we're not going to go in deep with, but Becky's Res Dogs. I'm not even going to give you an I Told You show because I mean, you deserve an I Told You show in the sense that
we're all going to watch this.
You told us about it, but Res Dogs.
It's too good.
I had heard about it.
No one deserves the Taika Waititi deserves the I Told You show.
Right, because he put his name on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Reservation Dogs, it takes place in a Native American reservation in Oklahoma. And it was I watched it's a dramedy. I thought when you said Taika Waititi, it was going to be more like What We Do in the Shadows. So I was a little bit confused.
No, it's more like a Hunt for the Wilder People vibe.
Yes, it's much more coming of age,
dark, but with wonderful humor.
Yeah,
and heart, so much heart.
Wow.
But not that it's dark. Charts. It's not even that it's dark. It's that it seems, and of course we don't really know, but it just seems very honest.
Yeah, so, we don't know, and
these, you know, right, and the reality of life for teenagers living on a reservation is not an easy place, but they're telling that story with humor and sensitivity and nuance, you know.
The show is created by Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi. I assume Sterling Harjo was the main creator, and Taika Waititi maybe joined, or maybe they created it together.
I don't know. We'll have to research it.
The cast is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to try to pronounce everyone's names right. Apologies if I don't, but there's Devry Jacobs plays Alara Danan Postok. By the way, the fact that one of the main characters' name.
So the scene where they're being interrogated by the meth guy.
The Willow thing comes up in every episode.
And that scene with the Willow, the whole thing about Willow, I was like, Shai's gonna love this show.
Yeah. And the fact that it comes up in every episode, the Willow connection.
Yeah. So I love that. That's just a great little detail that is so funny. And so and so she's phenomenal. DeFaro Woon Atai as Bear Smallhill, he's the audience avatar. He's the person you're watching the story through. He's phenomenal. Like, he has to work, and he works. He's so good. And then the two supporting characters, which I'm sure we'll get more of, Lane Factor as Cheese and Paulina Alexis as Willie Jack.
She's so good. I mean, Cheese is hilarious, but Paulina Alexis as Willie Jack is so good.
There's so much they can do with this show. And I just, again, started it. First episode, watched 3 episodes without thinking. Amazing. People start watching this. We will do a full episode of Friday Night Movie dedicated to this sometime soon. With that, let's get to some shout outs and Rex. I saw The Paper Tigers on Netflix. I feel like Netflix's movies are getting a little bit better. But again, it seems that the movies with not so famous people that actually invest in some story and creativity are better than the ones where they spent all the money on a big name. Paper Tigers. Oh, I don't know if it's actually formerly a Netflix movie, to be honest, but Paper Tigers is about three boys.
I feel like it's something they bought.
They bought, Three boys.
It's my feeling.
Three boys who were trained by a kung fu master. I don't know which city it's in. We couldn't figure out which city it's in. And then many years later, they abandon their kung fu for different reasons. And their master is killed, and they have to get to the bottom of his death and avenge it. And it has a mix of Three Ninjas and The Big Chill. It's got good drama, good comedy. It's not too long. Very, very enjoyable. And I watched it with Allie and cousin Mindy, and they both liked it too. Ted Lasso, off the charts here in season 2.
Did you watch the whole season?
We're already up to, well, not all the episodes have been released. We're through the Christmas episode, which was
no, I'm
lovely.
not. I'm waiting. I haven't started yet. But have you gotten to Sophia's episode? I'm just curious.
No, haven't gotten to it. Haven't gotten to it yet. And then don't worry, when we do, we will be posting tons of pictures from all of our accounts.
Okay.
And then watch the White Lotus season finale.
I liked it a lot.
I liked it, but I thought it petered out.
On what's that?
I thought it petered out. I thought it just kind of petered out. I thought it was a good episode, but ultimately it was just there. I hope they have totally different guests in the next season. That would make it more fun. But
I assume there's going to be different guests at the hotel. I don't know.
That's how that show has to work. I guess the person who died was much more obvious than I realized. And I was bummed, but I guess that's not really what the show is about. I guess it
wasn't really about the mystery.
It wasn't really about the mystery, but the mystery was so compelling. But the character growth, some people grew, some people didn't. It was cool, but I liked all of the episodes, but the last one more. And then our buy of the week, because we're going to keep this going, which is, again, these are official picks of the Friday Night Movie Podcast. So all the siblings have to buy it, and these have to be ones that we really love. We did the first couple were from creators that we know and love. This week we're just going with the fighting theme, and we are going with a film that not enough people have seen that is phenomenal. It is Warrior, starring Tom Hardy, Nick Nolte, who got a Oscar nomination for this, Joel Edgerton, Jennifer Morrison, Frank Grillo, I think in his pre-Kingdom role. I think his role as the training of this totally got him this. And the director is Gavin O'Connor, who I don't know what else Gavin O'Connor's directed, but I love the direction of this film, and I love the way music is used in this film. The music of The National is used a lot in it. And it's about two brothers who are MMA fighters, and it is as uplifting and heartbreaking at the same time as the first Rocky, in my opinion. And I think more people need to see it. It's set at the backdrop of the economic crash of 2008 as well. So that's another element of it that's really, really crucial. And people should really see that movie, Warrior. It's fantastic. All right, Lily, what do you have? Rex, shout outs and Rex?
Just pretty much that's it, what we've been watching. I finally finished Starstruck on HBO Max. I 100% recommend it. It's so lovely and cute. Please, watch that. It's so cute. And Atypical, which I'm almost on the final season. Very good as well. Those are my other shows.
Very cool. Atypical?
Cool. I like it a lot.
And Becky?
Honestly, Shai, I was really proud of myself this week for finding the time to sit down and start a new show.
You were a champion. I was reflecting on this.
Finish White Lotus.
How Becky has given birth and shown up to this show multiple times, let alone the week you've had just being covered in pink eye and diarrhea, and managed to watch Res Dogs.
Clear other people's pink eye and diarrhea, not my own.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I was just really excited that I was like, I'm gonna take initiative. I'm gonna start a new show, and then I'm gonna be able to talk about it in the Rex and shout outs, and you two are just going around stealing my thunder everywhere. But so it was Reservation Dogs. That's what I started.
Oh, Beck, but you deserve the credit for that even being on the show. Like, so yes, that's your rec, but it ended up being a whole segment because of you. So you get massive credit for that. So with that, where can people follow you, Beck?
Oh, at Paper BK Princess on Twitter.
And Lily, where can people follow you?
Chichi, CHICHIK Gomez on Twitter.
And you can follow me at Pancake and the number 4 table. That's Pancake 4 table on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow all the Friday Night Movie shenanigans at Fry Night Movie on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also check out our website, FridayNightMoviePod.com. We will be listing all of our weekly buys there, so you can go and see the archives as they get billed. Please join us in supporting the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Equal Justice Initiative, and the Asian American Journalists Association. And the theme music from What Does It Eat will kick in. Speaking of What Does It Eat, I'm the drummer in that band. And on April 27th, I will be a guest drummer with the great Rachel Levitin. So buy your tickets on Eventbrite, and we'll put there in my bio on Instagram as well. And it's vaccines and masks required, so it'll be a safe environment, and hopefully people will be there. We shall see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.